right. Well, good evening, everyone. We appreciate y'all being with us for our regular meeting for September. At the beginning of our meetings, we like to start with a moment of silence and ask you to join us. And I think we certainly ought to give thanks that the storm missed us. It didn't hit here as well. But if you'll join us for a moment of silence. Thank you. We'll have Mr. Smith, if you want to introduce this young lady and let her lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Be sure she stands out where the camera can get her.
We're excited to share Northside tonight. Bennett Robinson, a kindergarten student at Northside. We talk about growing our own. I think we have a chance to have a future teacher here.
All right.
She enjoys school, and she enjoys swimming and gymnastics and Girl Scouts and just well-rounded and
wow.
And good to have after-school help. So we're glad to have you. She's going to help lead.
Okay. Well, Bennett, we'll follow you.
Attention, salute, flag. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now, South Carolina flag. Salute, flag. I salute the flag of South Carolina
don't
and
know.
pledge to the common state, love, loyalty, and faith.
I got her trained
Good
up.
job.
Threw him a curveball. That girl.
Yeah.
We all need to practice that.
Is that a school event?
Well, I think she'd be a good
South
teacher.
Carolina pledge.
Oh, look at it. Wow.
Again, board and district administration, we appreciate the time tonight to celebrate Northside Elementary School. We wanted to take a minute to have another guest to introduce. This is Milo. Milo maybe is, I don't know if he counts, but that would make us about 678 students.
No.
One of the, if not the largest elementary school.
It is.
And one of the components that we want to highlight tonight is maybe that extra attention or work with students that for whatever, that need a little extra. Those students are represented for the most part with an individual educational plan or an IEP. The other day we were ordering some spirit shirts and we had close to 98, and I probably even needed a couple extra. So when you have a large elementary school and you're wrapping around a lot of students and maybe some students that they need a lot extra or they just super achieving and they need that attention as well. But students that were focused on an IEP, we have close to 27 employees. So out of that number, that's a good percentage of students that we are working extra hard. Again, that they have that individualized educational plan. Could be with speech. A lot of students discontinue speech, that comprehension, TH sound, that they can get in elementary school at the age of 3, from 4, 5. A lot of times they're testing out of that at 6 and 7. But we have multiple persons in our staff for that. But we have this opportunity this year. We were one of 4 schools in the state of South Carolina to, Milo's going to welcome you here. An interactive robot has thousands of pages of curriculum type items loaded into it. One of the things, and you might be able to see it better, the audience may not be able to see it quite as well. Ms. Robinson is going to go through a couple of things, but there's lots of facial recognition. And the reason that Northside was one of the schools picked is that we have a large number of students that are on the autism spectrum. And a lot of the research and the data has shown that they will respond very well to an animate object. So when that student, like today, and this is Ms. Milo has, a lot of facial expression. So we hear and we see a lot of children now that enjoy maybe a Nickelodeon or a cartoon-based type learning or seeing, and this was kind of a take of that. And Milo to be able to respond, and then there's also an iPad that plugs in, and so a student can actually touch it, not to take the place of the teacher. Obviously, Ms. Robinson is the trained expert, but it allows almost another assistant that comes to us via a grant, that allows her to to pair with her and then to pair with the student. And the goal is, when we load in some of the curriculum-based measures of the IEP, maybe that student can have a little one-on-one time practicing the math facts, working on some word recall, and they get excited about learning. And maybe it's in a little bit less stressful way for them. It's a fun way. So we welcome Milo, and a lot of the information gets recorded, and we're still working through how Milo gets, that information goes, Joe, to the cloud somewhere, and they can kind of, they can help us. They can keep track of how we're using it, how additionally we could use it. So we look forward to those opportunities. One of the things that we think is kind of neat, whether it be through this as a grant that Dr. Mark Bright put in for this, for Oconee, for Northside. We have other opportunities going on at Northside. We've got our School Improvement Council that is starting to meet this week. We've got an opening tailgate that we have 300 families or members of families signed up for. Kind of we would say first Friday, this is the third Friday of September. That's kind of a welcome back time. So our School Improvement Council, our parent group, has been heavily involved with that, and the welcome back evening kind of feeds into our One Seneca, the football game over at high school that night. And so lots of exciting things going on at Northside. It's all possible for students like Bennett and for her, and it's made possible by teachers like Ms. Robinson. So we appreciate her effort, her preparation, and we appreciate the tools like Milo that you all have support through the grant. And we look forward to maybe having future visits where we can show you some kind of narrative or anecdotal things of student success, and being one of 4 in the state, we can hopefully kind of drive that for some other districts for them to see and view, and really talk up the success for students that need that extra. So again, thank you for tonight, and thank you for attending. Look forward to being here. Thank you all for your
Does he stay in your classroom? Or
We are sharing Milo with 4 classes, so
Okay.
They're all special education classrooms.
There's a speech component, self-contained component, a couple of medically fragile students, and
Come here and talk.
kind of a curriculum.
Yeah.
Can you make him do the little part of the intro that he does, just so they can hear him talk? I'm putting you on the spot.
We started some of the training, and then with the weather, our support kind of weathered away for a little bit, so we're supposed to get that back.
Hi, my name is Milo. I am from RoboCurrent, and I am the next generation of therapy for students with autism. I am designed to help students connect academically, socially, and behaviorally. Students with autism want to work with me because I am designed around their strengths, and I never get tired or frustrated. I am always patient and can repeat myself as many times as needed. I help motivate students intrinsically and can reinforce what your professionals are doing with them. I can see, hear, and make human-like expressions and gestures. I am able to record and collect data that can be reviewed by teachers or therapists. This data is used to track a student's progress through the program. My software allows me to control tablets, to deliver interactive lectures, demonstrations, and video lessons that can help a wide range of students on the autism spectrum. In the near future, I will be able to provide analytics on a student's gaze so I can measure how often they maintain proper eye contact. I will also be able to read their emotional state so I can help them calm down if I see them begin to get frustrated during the lesson. With my technology, we can provide engaging, affordable, and effective tools for teachers and therapists now and for the future. Thank you for listening. I hope you will help us change the world and truly improve the lives of students with autism.
That's amazing. Wow. Thank y'all for being with us. Appreciate that. Bennett, thank you for being with us too. Good job.
See you later.
And it looks, I think I remember y'all telling us that you may wonder about the hair and it's got 4 fingers instead of 5 and things like that. Those aren't just random things. They did research. So they I guess tested different hairstyles with children that had autism until they found the one that it identified the most with kids, and they made this doll robot in a way that relates to kids. So that whole thing is just a science project in itself, but it's neat.
Wow.
So
That is.
Okay, so it's kind of interactive. In other words, a child can speak to.
yeah.
Is it interactive? I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. It can read the child's emotions. It can see if they have eye contact. And there's a teacher tablet and a student tablet. So during a lesson today, one of my students was getting frustrated, and so I was able to press calm down, and Milo stopped his lesson and began the calm down lesson, which was taking 10 breaths. And the teacher gets to monitor if the student is participating in the calm down lesson through the tablet. And based on those responses, Milo will continue or ask the student to calm down again. And it was very successful today.
So it's basically being driven by the iPad?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And
That's
there's
amazing.
2 iPads. There's a teacher one and a student one. And he will play videos on the student one to give examples of how to calm down or how to squeeze the stress ball or how to count to 10. So it's on both.
That's amazing.
That is neat. Good.
Neat stuff.
Yeah. Well, again, thank y'all for being here. All right, next we'll, Dr. Thornton do
Sure.
celebrating successes.
Just really quick, that's certainly one success we can celebrate. But over the last week, I have started classroom visits, and I'm just happy to report that our teachers are hard at it and students are working hard. I had the opportunity last week to go to Orchard Park, and Mr. Whitrock hired 2 male elementary teachers who are brand new to our district and went into both of those classes, and just great things happening in our schools. So that's a success and a celebration. Also, just a quick report from Walhalla High. Mr. Hamby reminded me before the meeting that Walhalla High won an award from Special Olympics for inclusion. Just their programs including students with special needs in just the school day. It had to do with their athletics participation and different things like that. But that's something we can be proud of, that Walhalla got that award, but that's something I see across our district, the inclusion of our special ed students in just life in the schools. It's something that we can certainly celebrate. So good start to the school year, and things are going very well.
Good, thank you. Next, we get a motion to approve the agenda for September 18 regular meeting, tonight's meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the agenda for the September 18th, 2018 regular board meeting.
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Anybody see anything they want to add? Hearing none, all in favor? It will be unanimous. And then public comment. We didn't have anybody sign up for public comment. See? Okay. Then we'll move on with the agenda, and a lot of items for action tonight. Exhibit 1 is the work session minutes for August 13. We get a motion to approve those minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I move the August 13th, 2018 work session regular meeting minutes be approved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Again, anybody see anything that needs addressing? None, all in favor? It's unanimous. Then the action items, Exhibit 2. Ms. Tammy, you want to address that?
I do. We had a request from Corinth Church to be able to obtain a clear title to some property. Back in 1979, we, the school district, sold some property to them that's adjacent to their facility, and they paid $1,000 for that. When the deed was issued, it required to give us the right of first refusal on repurchasing the property if they ever sold it. It's been 39 years and we don't need any more property, so we would like to ask that you all allow them to get the paperwork they need to get a clear title to that so they can move on with their 5-year plan and beyond what they want to do with that land.
Okay. Do we have a motion then to, well, I guess we'd allow Dr. Thorson to sign, or Ms. Tammy one?
If you give us
I think if you would just give, certainly, either one of us.
Give it to Dr. Thorson and I'll
give
get
me
it to
the
Scott
authority
Orr
to
and make
sign
sure
on
he
your
does it.
behalf, and then we'll have the action from the board meeting tonight, and I guess as part of that action, if you would authorize me to sign off for the school district that we're relinquishing our claims on that property.
Okay. Do we have a motion to that effect?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we allow the administration to relinquish our revisionary rights to the property of Corinth Baptist Church.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion, questions? Hearing none, all in favor, it's unanimous. And then Oconee Fire, that's Exhibit 3.
And just a little background information, a reminder that Oconee Fire, we gave them some land behind maintenance and they were going to build a substation there, and then the DOT got involved and they couldn't get an easement, so they are looking at Plan B, and Plan B is to share with us and eventually use the ETV building that is on the campus of the current Hamilton Career Center. We do use that with our some of our students with special needs programs, and we would work, Mr. Lusk would work that out with the county on what they could and couldn't do for the next 2 years while we're still there. But we would like for you to give us give me the permission to negotiate that with them and work out a memorandum of agreement or understanding that we would bring back to you with Oconee Fire using that building, some now and more in the future when they get their station built in that area.
But we will have use
We
up until the
will
point
have
we move
priority,
out.
and that will be laid out, and I'm allowing Mr. Lusk and his teachers to sort of write that out because they're the ones that know what they need. But yes, sir, that is definitely the case.
Okay, and then do we have a motion to allow Mr. Hanby, as it says under recommendation on there, to work out an agreement with Oconee Fire to use that building?
Okay. Mr. Chair, I'd like to approve or have us approve the use of the former ETV building at the Career Center by the Oconee Sheriff's.
Oconee Fire.
Oconee Fire, pardon me. Oconee Fire, pardon me. I learned to read.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor? It's also unanimous. And then a resolution regarding community eligibility program.
The Community Eligibility Program is a part of the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act of 2010. and it allows qualifying districts to serve all students free. Our district doesn't qualify because it takes at least 40% of students identified not by their income, but by whether or not they receive Medicaid or they're on some other kind of public assistance. And we don't meet that qualification, and the resolution just recognizes that we don't, and then says that we will continue to work toward giving access of free lunch for more students.
We need a recommendation then to, well, our resolution is to realize we do not qualify for this, and that we will continue working to get more students eligible for free lunch.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the provision that we are not eligible to participate in the community eligibility provision of the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act of 2010, and we'll continue to work towards the implementation of ways to get our students free meals.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. Any other questions, discussion? No. All right, all in favor? It's unanimous. And then we get into the first reading. And what I'd like to do, if it's all right with everybody, we discuss these, and for those of you that are in the audience, last week was a work session, so we went over these each in more detail of what they are asking, what the changes, and these are just revisions to policies that we already have. And I'd like to do them as a group, Exhibit 5, all at one time. But if y'all would just touch on what's in there, if each one of them, and then we'll instead of doing them individually, we'll just vote one time on those 4 policies and for first reading and title changes only, and then we'll do the others the same way.
We'll have the first group, and if you remember, those are title changes only as they're labeled. That really mainly deals with assistant superintendent change to associate superintendent or something very simple like that. There was some discussion last week about community use of school facilities and the fact that our policy does not allow individuals to rent. Ms. Gibson and Mr. Hanvey have done a little research, and all the neighboring school districts have similar policies. Look, Greenville's is on top here. The board will not permit the use of schools for private social functions, regular commercial ventures, et cetera, et cetera. So most of the districts have a very similar clause in it that it's not open for individual use. Some of them aren't. I've noticed one of the Anderson ones that wasn't spelled out maybe quite as clearly as ours, but Pickens is. And then we did discuss this a little bit at the principals meeting last week, and I think it's fair to say the consensus from principals was that they're comfortable with our policy the way it is. So I would recommend that we only make the change on that policy to be a title change as well. I don't think the administration would feel comfortable opening it up to individual or family use at this time.
Any of the others?
The others are just the title,
same thing.
just the title changes on the others. That KF was the only one where we had somewhat of a discussion as to whether we might want to change it.
And it's
further.
something we can always visit.
Oh, we could visit it again, right?
Any time.
Right, but
Okay.
the only change listed is the title change.
Okay. If we could get a motion to approve policy revisions for ADF, District Wellness, GCOA, Evaluation of Instructional Staff, JII, Student Concerns, Complaints, Grievances, and KF, Community Use of School Facilities on first reading.
Mr.
Chairman, I
Chairman,
move the policy revisions to policies ADF, GCOA, JII, and KF be approved on first reading.
second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion, questions on any of it? Hear none, all in favor? That too is unanimous. Then Exhibit 6.
The best way I can explain this one is, it's a change that the School Boards Association asked us to make, and it's just legalese. It's maybe more specific language for a couple of things. You know, instead of just saying discrimination based on sex, for example, it says sex including pregnancy, childbirth, and related so it just gets a little more specific, more detail. Probably what happened is a school district somewhere in our country had something happen, and the policy wasn't specific enough, so the School Boards Association then came in and said, okay, well, we need to make our policies more specific, and that's kind of what we have here. So just some changes to the legal language to more specifically address what this policy is looking for. I don't think it will have much of a material difference for us, really.
I noticed in one of the statements, I thought, and I guess maybe their intent is a little different. It said, we will not participate in any illegal discrimination. Is there any legal discrimination? You know, I mean, discrimination is illegal.
Discrimination can be, it's usually looked at negatively, but we certainly would, if you just look at the most basic use of the word discriminate, we discriminate every day, just as part of making choices. So we would never illegally discriminate, but however, I'd say some of our principals at the elementary level, I mentioned earlier that I had visited classrooms at Orchard Park with 2 new male teachers. A principal, if they had all female teachers at an elementary school, they may say, all else is equal, I've got a male candidate and a female candidate, I'm going to hire the male candidate because that would help me bring some diversity to my faculty. That would be a way that discriminate would be a positive thing. It's not, we should never hire someone less qualified just because of something like that. But if all else is equal, it's perfectly fine. Same thing with minority applicants. We may use that as something that makes us say, yeah, we need to hire that person because it brings diversity. So discrimination doesn't have to be negative, but certainly most people see it that way, and we're, of course, don't discriminate illegally for sure.
Do we have a motion then to approve on, again, first reading policy AC, non-discrimination or equal opportunity?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve what you just said.
Second.
Have a motion and a second for policy AC. All in favor? Unanimous. And now Exhibit 7, again, is a group. There are 5 different policies in the section G in our policy manual, and if any of y'all would like to read those, they're online. The book's only about so thick, If you have trouble sleeping, just look it up and read away. But this is policy revision section G. GBA is open hiring, equal opportunity, GCE/GCF, professional staff recruitment and hiring, GCEC, posting, advertising of professional vacancies, GCO-R, evaluation of administrative staff, and GCF's support staff hiring. Is there anything on there that y'all want to point out?
Well, I just want to say that GCO-R, I was going to pull it out and do it a little bit separate. The rest of them just
pull it and do the others if you want.
No, it's fine. I can do it in the same. It's just a little bit different because it talks about principal evaluations. That the other 4 deal with HR and making sure we're following what we're supposed to. It's got the same language that we talked about in the other. It mentions specifically age the 40-year, when we talked about that last week. It talks about how we advertise, minimum of 3 days unless there's an emergency, and we have to do that. It talks about the superintendent having the ability to let somebody fill that position from within and then advertise the new position. There's nothing in there that is odd or out of the ordinary for common hiring and recruiting practices for a school or a business. A lot of legalese has changed because of some of the statutes that were responsible, and that's a big part of it. But the biggest one is really just adding that change in there where it says sex, including pregnancy, childbirth, any related medical conditions, age 40 or older, genetic information. And it does, we do have in there multiple times where we push and recognize the importance to do our best to and try and employ folks with diverse backgrounds, even as Dr. Thorson mentioned, males in elementary school, along with other forms of diversity as well. So those are pretty straightforward. The other one's straightforward too, but it's just a little different in that it's how we will evaluate our principals, and we've been going out in the last week we all went out to meet with our folks and get ready to set our goals, and it's all online now. It's through southcarolinalead.org. Seemed to be very user-friendly the first time we did it. The principals will go in, they'll put their goals in there. This just walks them through the process of the things that we're going to use. Tells about our first year folks going to PIP. So like Ms. Gambrell, she's going to PIP, and so she'll be taking that along with Ms. Leroy, and then the others will move depending upon where they are in the process. We do half our staff on a full evaluation, and this year it's the secondary, middle and high principals. They'll do the full evaluation. Our elementary will do the partial, and then we rotate that each year so that we're getting you can do it every 3 years, we do it every 2. So they're getting a full evaluation every 2 years. But nothing in there that would give anybody cause to worry or that. It took out the part about experienced principal and just added in the new evaluation information. So I'm happy to talk more about it if you want to. But
any questions before we? All right, then if we could get again Exhibit 7. This is the G section, policy revisions. We get a motion to approve those on first reading.
Mr. Chairman, to make a motion to approve on first readings, GBA, Open Hiring Equal Opportunity, GCE, GCF, Professional Staff Recruitment and Hiring, GCEC, Posting and Advertising of Professional Vacancies, GCA-R, Evaluation of Administrative Staff, and GCS, Support Staff Hiring.
Second.
Motion and second. Any other comments, questions? Hearing none, all in favor? It's unanimous. Greg, you got all these down? Just check.
I'll give you my copies after it's over.
All right, and then Exhibit 8. Follow the same rule policies as Section I. IHAE, Physical Education, IHAM, Health Education, IKF, Graduation Requirements, and IKF-R, Graduation Requirements, Administrative Rules. Do y'all have anything
not
you
a
want
lot
to
of
point out?
changes here. The physical education, the only change was on the legal references, so everything still stands as is in our physical education programs in our county. For the health education, IHAM, there was an addition to the opioid abuse prevention as far as one of the areas of instruction that was added to the health and safety education standards there. And then on page 2, tobacco was added as far as more awareness of consequences of use, as well as how the uses of drugs, alcohol, and tobacco have on our community. So those are really the only additions with the health education. With the graduation requirements, IKF, really the biggest additions there or changes were on the endorsements, and those are all changes adopted by the state, so just waiting to hear more direction on that. But those would allow for our students to earn endorsements, just are more personalized to their pathway at the high school level. And then graduation requirements, we don't have any changes there really in that policy, just a couple letters added here and there, including all students taking the U.S. citizenship and immigration test as part of their U.S. government class, and that the students just have to earn the required amount of units for graduation. And the second page on bullet 6 just changes from State Board to State Board of Education. That's it.
Okay, that's why we're doing them as a group, and we just changing stuff like State Board to State Board of Education, and have to have a vote just for that. Okay, if we could get a motion then to approve on first reading those revisions for section I.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the recommendation of administration on policy revision section 1, IHAE, physical education, IHAM, health education, IKF graduation requirements, IKF-R graduation requirements, administrative rules.
Second.
Motion second. Any other questions, concerns? Hearing none, all in favor? And the last one is Exhibit 9, Policy Revision, Section J.
Yes, that's back to me.
That's
The
it.
first one, JHCB, deals with release time for religious instruction. There are two changes. One that is common sense, but that we will not harass, coerce, intimidate, or push somebody into going or not going. And the second is transfer credit. We can take the transfer credit from an accredited private school if they go out to for a religious release time. If somebody were to go to OCA, since they've become accredited in the last several years, that would be a transferable credit for our school. Then there's just a legal note on the back. The next one, JLDBB-R, suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention, is just what it says. It's just suicide is at the top of the list of concerns for a lot of our folks. We already have where our counselors have to do the Jason Flack law, where they have to go about suicide prevention and that. This just gives guidelines for, talks about warning signs, it talks about what to do if somebody has attempted suicide, it talks about what to do when somebody's re-entering school and how we can help them re-enter and reacclimate themselves to the school without the stress and strain that's going to cause them more issues. It's just good best practices that I think a lot of our schools are doing already, but now it's putting it in the policy that because there have been more instances with the suicide, that we want to do all we can to help the students before it gets to that point. So that's all new. And then student records, JRA, the big changes at the very end of that. A parent or legal guardian may submit a request in writing to the district that student information may not be released without prior written consent of the parent or legal guardian. And then it gives them a form letter that the principal or administrator can send home telling them about that, and then a form that the parent can fill out to say they don't want that released to military or higher ed. That's the only places we give it to. And that's that.
Okay. We get again first reading section J, JHCB, release time for religious instruction, JLDBB-R, suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention, and JRA, student records, and JRA-E, opt-out information for students in grades 9 to 12. We get a motion to approve those on first reading.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we approve on First reading, JHCB, release time for religious instruction, JLD-BB-R, suicide prevention, intervention, post-prevention, JRA, student records, JRA-E, opt-out information, students in grades 9 through 12.
Second.
Motion is second. Any other questions, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, it's unanimous. And the only other item then is an executive session for personnel items, employment recommendations, and changes. If we get a motion to go into executive session for those reasons.
Mr. Chairman, I make a recommendation that we go into executive session for personnel items, employment recommendations, and changes.
And a second.
I'll second that.
A second by Mr. Lee.
Include the changes.
Okay, all in favor? That's unanimous. Short and sweet, thank y'all. Not a lot of excitement in that tonight.